Welcome to the channel. I just lowered my shields a little while ago so that I could view the videos of the Nashville school shooting that happened earlier this week through the lens of the officers' body-worn cameras. Being able to check in with that for myself and lean in to view that. It's the second time that I've seen the videos. And in doing so, it reminded me of some training videos that I'd made several years ago while I was still working as a therapist with first responders. Talked about things, and one of the things that really stands out is that most of us that are helpers, doctors, nurses, therapists, social workers, teachers, police officers, firefighters, paramedics, attorneys, etc., we carry some traits with us, and one of those things is this element of a self-sacrifice. And it's that one component that contributes to the onset of burnout eventually. And as we move forward and lean into the hard things, whether it's school shootings, whether it's pandemics, or simply the run-of-the-mill routine instances that call for you to lean in to do the career that you love to do, or at least you love to do it at some point, can wear and tear unless we do something with it to actually pay attention to it and be healthy with it. One aspect in all of this that stood out for me the most in watching the officers responding to the school shooting is this metaphor of running to the tower. What's involved in that? We'll talk more about that after you watch these clips.
Public safety, first responders tend to bring with them certain traits that are very consistent across the industry, across the field, not only in the United States, but worldwide. There are certain things that are common amongst almost all first responders. Firstly, I like to describe them in the framework of three metaphors. The first metaphor is noble cause, simply wanting to make the world a better place, help those that can't help themselves, rescue those that are in need, something greater than ourselves. Many careers have this kind of a characteristic within the people that are doing those careers. Doctors, nurses, teachers, social workers, therapists, cops, firefighters, lifeguards, medics. They all tend to have some sort of way of approaching the world and approaching others. And part of what drives that is their compassion. They actually care deeply for those that they're serving, at least at the outset. The second metaphor is smelling the victim's blood. But with first responders, though, they're moving to it. They're standing in it while it's happening often. At crash scenes, losses, fires, deaths, carnage, disasters, it plays out in many different ways. Often it's the emotional adversity that's present that they stand present in, the violence, the victimization with injuries or not with injuries. Firefighters, medics are present there with the injuries more often than the cops. They literally are smelling the victim's blood often. The third trait is running to the tower. It's this third trait that starts to set public safety first responders away from the other ones that also carry with them a noble cause and smelling the victim's blood. Running to the tower, moving to the danger while it's happening, exposing the body to direct harm, possibility of death and injury, while others are hiding, calling for help, needing rescuing, needing assistance. That is different than what most other career paths across the globe encounter. It's even played out a little differently than what military encounter. We'll talk more in another video about what can be done when one of these three traits is overly compromised. Unrelenting standard, emotional inhibition, and self-sacrifice. With the metaphors come personality characteristics that are actually measurable. They're discernible, they're endorsable by many people once they're aware that they even have a name. The first, the one that's attached with noble cause, is unrelenting standard. Being really good at what we do, focusing, dedicated, committed, tenacious, persistent, a strong sense of right and wrong. There's a lot of different characteristics that come with a high unrelenting standard. The trait that comes with smelling the victim's blood is a trait of emotional inhibition. Somewhere throughout life experience, individuals frequently learn a coping strategy for not to express a lot of emotion outwardly. Sometimes not even to experience it inwardly, that it's actually inhibited. It is experienced, it just doesn't come up into awareness that it's present. So emotional inhibition can allow first responders to stand present in other people's adversity without gushing too much upset. But what also comes with this then is another way of viewing it, is that it's sometimes empathic distress. It actually becomes distressful and upsetting for the individuals when emotions do start to come up. And that is frequently shows itself within relationships and family settings where emotions are expected, they're actually wanted by the family members, and they're not present, or they're present in a way that tends to be inappropriately expressed. Then the third trait, the one that goes with running to the tower, is self-sacrifice. Self-sacrifice is actually exposing this body to danger, to harm's way, in a way that it could be injured, could be killed. Law enforcement is frequently going to the danger, going to the fight, engaging in the fight, reaching in. It's exposing themselves to a tremendous threat to their own safety, all for the purpose of engaging with the noble cause and helping those that can't help themselves. For firefighters and medics, it's moving to a different type of danger, but it's still pulling the body into something that the body knows that it can be injured in. Certain rescue scenes, fire settings. The self-sacrifice also, in addition to exposing the body to danger, brings with it some other things over the long haul, or over the course of a career. That self-sacrifice, going to work, working the odd shifts that law enforcement and public safety work, is a strain on relationships, on family life. Going to kids' games, their sporting events, social engagements. There all tends to be a little bit of a sacrifice, not only for the individual that's doing the first responder work, but also for the people left at home. There's a sacrifice, it's well known across the industry that first responders tend to encounter higher rates of cancers, heart disease, lung disease, liver disease, kidney disease, and many other ailments at a little higher rate. It is a significantly higher rate than the rest of the general population. The medical realm and the research starts to support that it's actually an artifact of an unrelenting stress to the body.
The broad category has to do with the effect of chronic major unrelieved stress on the workings of one's brain and central nervous system. In recent years, this is relatively new, it's become clear that chronic major unrelieved stress can produce the release of pro-inflammatory chemicals in a person's body, and also can suppress immune system function.
So these three traits combined are wonderful while they're intact. If any one of them is overly compromised, and if more than one is overly compromised, there's potential challenge set up for anybody that is doing the career paths to stay healthy and stay well.
If you're feeling pulled into wanting to view the Tennessee police response on your own, a link is provided in the description down below. So far in this video, I've been talking about self-sacrifice attached with this metaphor of running to the tower. And not all of us who are helpers run physically into the towers like the way that the police officers do in this video. Yet we do all run to our own towers periodically. They can be emotional, psychological, spiritual towers. They can be working with patients, clients, students. The towers show up in many ways across life. It's a metaphor. But the self-sacrifice will be consistent across many of the scenarios. Police officers and firefighters oftentimes are sacrificing their own physical well-being as well as their psychological, mental, and spiritual well-being. And so many doctors and nurses and therapists and teachers do the same thing. We will give up our personal space, our personal well-being, to take care of the needs of those that we're serving, that we've chosen to serve over and over. It's because this is why we step into their careers. An important aspect of this then is to identify for yourselves, for each of us, our why, our intention. Not just the intention to answer a particular call or to interact with a particular patient or a client, but the why, the intention to even be doing the job. Sometimes it's money, and that'll be a thing on its own because, maybe you're going to get paid, maybe you're not going to get paid. But very often it's something way deeper. There's a why. There's something that is fueling that noble cause, driven by the ability to find compassion for others, to relieve other people's suffering, or to prevent other people's suffering. And along the way, disregarding self-compassion. We will create our own sense of suffering, not on purpose, it's usually not intentional, but we lean in to help others, disregarding compassion for ourselves. And when we turn inward and we provide self-compassion, and there are very specific practices that can be practiced and can be learned to bring compassion inward. My experience, specifically when I was working as a therapist with so many first responders, is that so often the idea of being self-compassionate not only felt foreign, but it also created a sense of avoidance. They didn't want to do it. Oftentimes they might verbally just outwardly say, no, not me. I'll go give it to everybody else, but no, I'm not going to be compassionate toward myself. And yet that's the one place where it's needed the most. And maintaining that, tapping into the why, to the intention to move in, and then nurture it, be loving and tender to it and kind to it, and then go step out and do the hard thing, strengthens the individual psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually to do it over and over and over and over, knowing that they're going to go dive into something that's really scary, really intense, tremendous amounts of human suffering, but they're doing it with purpose and with awareness and with intention. And then they can come out of it, out the back end, restore, recharge, and go do it again, over and over for the course of a career. Ideally with less wear and tear on the psyche and on the body, as we saw Dr. Folletti talk about on how so much of the body systems will wear and tear over the long haul under exposure to unrelenting high-stress environments. So that's what this channel is going to be about, is developing and teaching and learning practices of compassion, self-compassion, mindful awareness, various other aspects of mindfulness that can be useful through all aspects of living, but very specifically for those of us that are continuing to run to towers to access our noble cause, to keep it alive and well, so that when it's burning out, we know where the burnout's coming from. The burnout's not coming from the calls. The calls is what we signed up to do. The burnout is something else usually that's going to be happening on the inside, that we can sense it, we can tend to it, so that it doesn't get so hot that it actually burns out. We can keep the fuel burning. We can keep the fire going for doing the work that we want to do. So with that, I wish you well, and may you remain free of harm.